The world was not ending, it was being rebranded. On the 14th floor of Vault Tower, beneath a wall-sized LED screen rotating promotional loops for the new season of The Dawn of the Seven, all soft focus shots of Homelander-saving cats and Starlight-looking Ernest, Ashley Barrett was having her 7th panic attack of the morning. Not because of a looming super-terrorist attack or an actual crisis, but because the new season's key art accidentally used a non-union background actor for a 5-minute cameo, triggering an immediate internal review and a frantic search for the body double's contract. The crisis wasn't the moral rot of the company, it was the corporate liability of the paperwork. 1,000 feet below her, the air itself tore. It wasn't a sudden, ripping sound, but a pressurized shriek that warped space-time into a shimmering, oily vortex, like a soap bubble stretching before snapping. The breach manifested directly over an ongoing Vault Cares-sponsored photo op, where a mid-tier, overly muscled, gravity-defying soup named Terra Tectonic was demonstrating his heroic control by levitating a stack of children's hospital donations. In a flash of raw, dimensional energy, the super-terrorist he was fighting, a generic villain named Crusher, who was essentially a very hard rock, was replaced by 3 impossible figures plummeting to the New York pavement: a man in a black cowl and grey armor, a figure in a yellow suit and cheap white cape, and a massive metal chassis covered in synthetic skin. Terra Tectonic, who made his living smashing things and looking dramatic, saw the armored figure, Batman, and roared a challenge, instantly bringing his hands together to slam a wave of concussive force into the man-sized target. The impact threw concrete shards into the air and cracked the street, but the figure in the cowl simply dug his boots into the pavement, his armor absorbing the kinetic energy. His gaze was not on the soup, but on the blinding neon Vault billboard across the street that screamed, "The Seven, the world is safe." Priority 1, ingress location confirmed, a low, metallic voice processed. The T-800 had landed in a 3-point stance, its internal chronometer immediately calculating the atmospheric density, structural integrity of the surrounding buildings, and the immediate threat level, SOUP, 710. Corporate security, 210. Legal liability, undefined. It registered the costumed threat, Terra Tectonic, and began cycling for a firing solution. Before the Terminator could even bring its arm up, Saitama sighed. The sound was inaudible over the street chaos but felt on a cosmic level. He looked less surprised and more profoundly annoyed to be standing on the wrong planet. He barely registered the shouting, the sirens, or the aggressively toned soup who was posturing wildly at the armored man. His eyes scanned the impossibly dense, vertical skyline, registering the Vault logos everywhere. He felt nothing. Terra Tectonic, frustrated by the unmoving human target, turned his rage on the man in the pathetic yellow costume, charging with a velocity that could turn a car to scrap. "Look at this garbage. Did they send a clown to fight a real hero?" Saitama raised his hand. It was the laziest, most effortless movement in the history of physical existence. It wasn't even a punch, it was a backhanded flick of the wrist, a gesture of profound disinterest. The impact was not visible, audible, or registerable by the naked eye. Terra Tectonic, who could withstand a cruise missile, did not explode, was not crushed, and did not bleed. He simply vanished. The space he occupied went from being occupied by a screaming, muscled man to being occupied by empty air, instantly heated to over 5,000 degrees Celsius. The only evidence he had been there was a sudden, circular patch of fused black glass on the street, and a momentary puff of fine, vaporized carbon dust settling on the sidewalk, which an automated Vault Street cleaner instantly began trying to vacuum up. On the 14th floor, Ashley's trichotillomania flared violently. The whole city's internal Vault security grid went dark, then pinged back online with a single, incomprehensible notification that flashed in blood-red text across every monitor. 7 power scale violation, threat level unknown. Physics. Violation 100%, asset loss 100%. In the wreckage nearby, crouched in the shadows of a defunct electronics store, Billy Butcher raised a pair of military-grade binoculars, his eye widening with genuine shock, a look he usually reserved for seeing his dead wife. He had been tracking the massive energy spike that preceded the breach, hoping to grab some experimental compound V to reverse his temp V damage. He saw the black patch of fused pavement and the man in the yellow cape dusting off his glove. "Huey," Butcher whispered, lowering the binoculars, the cynicism suddenly draining from his face to be replaced by cold, calculating pragmatism. "I think we just found a new lever. Looks like a fucking god and his 2 very broken mates just turned up to play. And the cunt in the stars and stripes won't like this one bit." Huey, shivering in his stolen Vought surveillance van, looked at the images popping up on his monitor, the black-armored man, the silent, terrifying metallic man, and the bored-looking man who just vaporized a soup with a cough. He didn't see heroes. He saw 3 disasters waiting to happen, each one a different flavor of ultimate power. He saw his death, possibly without clothes. "Butcher, he just erased him," Huey stammered, pointing to the fused concrete. "There's no body, no blood, just nothing." "Yeah," Butcher said, a grim smile finally splitting his face. "That means he's not one of theirs, which means, for the brief time he's here, he's ours. Go on, get the van started, we're going to make some introductions. And if we're lucky, that yellow cunt will finally put that narcissistic stain on a cape out of his misery." The trio of outsiders, already surrounded by tactical SWAT teams who didn't understand the scale of the threat, stood still. Saitama was still looking bored. Batman was already running analytics on the Vought Tower's structural weak points, and the T-800 had found a 9mm pistol in the wreckage, its programming shifting from survival to objective, neutralize hostile corporate structure. The war was about to begin, but the enemy was not a man in a cape. It was a corporation in a suit. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Some things can't be fixed. The collision was not a fight. It was a demonstration, a brutal, instantaneous recalibration of the universe's physics by a profoundly bored man. It was what Vought had always feared, but never had the imagination to conceive, a genuine god walking into their rigged game. Homelander arrived 2 minutes after the event, shattering the sound barrier, his boots melting the asphalt on landing, radiating a terrifying mix of fury and narcissistic injury. He ignored the cowering SWAT teams and the 2 strange, less flashy figures, focusing his predatory glare entirely on the yellow-caped figure, Saitama. The corporate monster, who had been raised in a sterile lab, believing he was the sole apex predator, was consumed by the sudden realization that his reign was a lie. This man had done what he could not, erase a soup without effort. "Who the hell are you?" Homelander's voice boomed, a mixture of a father's disappointed shout and a psychopath's warning. His eyes began to glow, his signature move, the heat vision that could carve through titanium and innocence with equal ease. "Did Edgar send you? Did you seriously think you could try a hostile takeover of my city? I'm the only hero here, you cheap Halloween costume reject." Saitama turned his head slowly, a process that suggested he was running out of motivation to even complete the movement. He looked at Homelander's perfect, smiling, enraged face, then at the glowing eyes, and finally, with a visible lack of interest, down at the ground. "You're loud," Saitama noted, the only thing he found remarkable about the encounter. Homelander's face cycled through confusion, then shock, and finally, murderous rage. This was worse than a threat. It was indifference. He screamed, a sound that cracked nearby windows and unleashed his heat vision. Two scarlet beams, pure energy hotter than the sun's surface, struck Saitama's torso point blank. The heat vision, the world-ending power that had vaporized countless innocents and carved a permanent place for Homelander at the top of the Vought hierarchy, simply reflected off the cheap yellow suit. Not only did it fail to penetrate the fabric, but the beams deflected off his chest and slammed into two nearby Vought-owned storefronts, vaporizing the merchandise and the security cameras inside. Saitama didn't flinch. He looked down at the impact point, then back up at Homelander with a look of slight exasperation. "Can you not do that?" Saitama asked, sounding like someone complaining about an overflowing coffee cup. "It's going to make a mess, and I'm pretty sure someone has to pay for this." This was the end of Homelander's reign. The ultimate lie was exposed in 3 seconds of reflected laser beams. Homelander, paralyzed by the psychological trauma of his ultimate weapon being utterly useless, stumbled back, his eyes wide, the heat vision sputtering out. He had only one option left, the physical confrontation. He flew forward, a blur of red, white, and blue, screaming a battle cry that was more a desperate plea for dominance. He slammed into Saitama with the force of a nuclear warhead, attempting a full-power tackle that was meant to atomize his opponent. Saitama did not move, did not brace, and did not punch. He merely stood his ground. Homelander's impact was like a mosquito hitting a granite mountain. The only thing that registered was the sound of Homelander's own arm joints cracking from the force of the return impact, an instantaneous shockwave of resistance that traveled up his limbs. He bounced off, landing hard on the pavement 50 feet away, clutching a shoulder that felt instantly dislocated, his perfect hair slightly messed up, his perfect smile replaced by pure, unadulterated terror. You just stood there," Homelander whispered, his voice broken, realizing he had just hit his limit, and his opponent hadn't even started. Saitama merely looked at the mess, the fused glass, the hole in the street, and the sobbing hero in the star-spangled costume. "I told you to stop making a mess." As Homelander tried to process the total psychological collapse of his identity, the T-800 had already calculated the optimal moment for non-detection. It ignored the confrontation, walking past the broken soup, its internal mission now clear. Homelander, threat level, reduced to 0.03%, target Vought infrastructure. Now primary. Batman, meanwhile, he had taken advantage of the distraction to deploy several microscopic, non-lethal electronic countermeasure drones. He wasn't focused on the flying maniac, he was focused on the corporate structure. The drones quickly inserted themselves into the optical network of Vaught's perimeter cameras and the emergency broadcast systems. The man in the cowl was not looking for a fight, he was looking for the operating manual. Butcher and Huey pulled up in the stolen van just as Homelander, defeated and terrified, used his last scrap of self-preservation to flee the scene, flying erratically back toward Vought Tower to report his impossible defeat. Butcher slammed the van door shut, walking toward Saitama. "Right, you, the bald one. Excellent work on the cunt, really top shelf. Now listen up, we're the boys. We're the only cunts fighting this lot." Saitama looked at Butcher, then at Huey, then back at the fused pavement. "I don't need a team, I just want to find out where the nearest hot dog stand is. And I want to know why there are so many commercials for this soup thing." Batman stepped forward, his cape flowing slightly despite the stillness of the air. He extended a hand, not in friendship, but in calculated offer. "We have the same enemy, Mr. Butcher, a corporation that uses human potential as a weapon and a brand. My resources are limitless, and my focus is justice, not celebrity. We require your knowledge of this reality's weak points. I propose a temporary, strictly compartmentalized alliance." Butcher studied Batman's armored face. A moral compass, dangerous but useful. Justice, eh? Sounds quaint. Our target is the system that lets cunts like that flying tosser walk free. We call it Vought. You got a plan for that, fancy pants? I do, Batman stated simply. I target their most vulnerable asset, not a person, their control. The T-800, arriving back from a quick, silent scouting of the immediate perimeter, stood beside Butcher, its red optical sensor locking on to the grim figure of the vigilante. It recognized a kindred spirit in the ruthless pragmatism of the mission. The Terminator spoke, its voice a synthesized monotone. Directive updated, new objective, assist in the dismantling of Vought International. Lethal force authorized on all non-compliant Vought assets. Butcher grinned, a dark, terrible expression. He looked at the bored god, the brilliant tactician, and the immoral killing machine. Right, the 7 just became the 1. Let's go, lads. Time to take over this shithole. Homelander's return to Vought Tower was not the triumphant spectacle usually reserved for his appearances. He materialized in Stan Edgar's private suite, slamming through the plate glass window, his immaculate suit torn, his shoulder dislocated, and his perfect smile replaced by the panicked grimace of a defeated god. He wasn't bleeding, but he was broken. Stan Edgar, seated behind his desk and calmly examining a complex quarterly report on Compound V stock performance, did not flinch. John, the window is going to cost Vought International $60,000. Perhaps in future you could use the elevator? He just stood there, Homelander shrieked, pointing a trembling finger into the air. I hit him with everything. The heat, the strength. He just stood there and told me to stop making a mess. He's nothing. He's wearing a t-shirt. He's a joke. The sheer, visceral terror in his voice was a sound Edgar had never heard. It was the sound of a product realizing it was obsolete. Edgar calmly set the report down, giving his most valuable, most volatile asset a cool, calculating look. Then you have confirmed the analysis, John. The threat is not physical, it is existential. You are obsolete. A simple, unbranded product has entered the market and made our entire superhero division a bad investment. This was the corporate pivot. With Homelander, Vaught's $10 billion a year core asset, suddenly demoted to an unstable mid-tier threat, the battle shifted from superhuman brawling to corporate defense. The ultimate intellect, Stan Edgar, realized the actual enemy was not the man who punched, but the man who planned, Batman. Ashley Barrett, having been hauled from her earlier nervous breakdown, was now running the new corporate defense matrix. Her hair was a mess, her eyes bloodshot, but her focus was absolute. She stood in the war room where the usual glamour shots of the Seven were replaced by real-time satellite imagery of Batman's armored figure meeting with Butcher in a dilapidated warehouse district. The bald one, Saitama, is a non-factor for corporate strategy, Ashley rattled off, pointing to a data screen. He's a black swan event that defies physics, but his profile shows no resources, no known agenda, and critically, no representation. He can vaporize 1,000 soups, but he can't buy stock, file a lawsuit, or influence a lobbyist. He's just noise. The real threat is the armored one, she continued, clicking to a projection of Batman's highly secured, fully encrypted file. His gear is non-Vought, untraceable. His methodology is purely tactical, non-powered, and focuses on infrastructure. He's already accessed our sub-level finance servers through a redundant fiber line we thought was obsolete. He's looking for the money. He's not a hero. He's an industrial espionage expert with a cape. Edgar appeared on the screen, a chillingly calm figure. Ashley, I want a full-spectrum defense, legal, PR, and physical. The other one, the Chrome machine, the T-800, I want him for R&D. He's unpowered, yet clearly superior to any known Vought tech. Find his weak point and replicate his chassis. The armored man, Batman, must be countered by our legal team. I want every single action he takes to result in a multi-billion-dollar liabilities suit. I want his reputation destroyed so thoroughly that any truth he exposes is dismissed as the ravings of an unrepresented zealot. The physical defense fell to the Broken Seven. Queen Maeve, disillusioned and drinking heavily, Starlight, deeply conflicted, and A-Train, desperately trying to keep his failing heart from giving out, were assembled by Ashley. The new enemy is smart, quiet, and operates outside the contract, Ashley told them, her voice cracking. Your job is not to win, not to kill. It is to draw collateral damage. Batman and his allies are avoiding civilian casualties. That is their weakness. Stage a hostage crisis. Force them to break their own rules. Make them choose between their moral code and stopping our corporate mandate. Meanwhile, in Butcher's subterranean hideout, the cynical alliance was already strained. Butcher and Huey were using their stolen data to feed Batman's algorithms. Right, so Vault's financial crimes are all tied up in shell companies, Butcher explained, pointing to a sprawling ledger Batman's computer had decrypted in under an hour. They fund the super terrorists, claim the insurance payout, then get the military contract to fight the problem they created. Newman's on the payroll. Congress is bought. It's a closed circle, mate. Batman nodded, his cowl reflecting the glow of the screen. An elegant corruption. We hit the foundation. Their stock price is their life support. I will release the complete financial data, the funding of the super-terrorist cells, and the pharmaceutical fraud concerning Compound V's lethal side effects, all authenticated and legally binding. The T-800 stood silently next to them, reloading a large caliber machine gun liberated from a Vault military base. This plan relies on the legitimacy of this world's legal and financial systems. Historical data suggests systems are corrupted for self-preservation. Exactly, Butcher scoffed, lighting a cigarette. The only thing a cunt with a dollar sign on his back understands is a gun pointed at his wallet. We hit the wallet, and the big metal bastard takes out the guards when they scramble. Saitama was sitting on a ruined filing cabinet, reading a year-old comic book he found in the trash. He flipped a page, his mind clearly not on the complex financial warfare. Hey, are any of these guys good at fighting? Saitama asked, looking up at the team with the desperate hope of a man waiting for a delayed bus. Like, really good? I've been here for hours, and the only thing I've punched was a guy who exploded by accident. Batman turned his attention to the hero. Your power is too great for this conflict. You can end any physical threat, but your physical solution only creates more problems. Homelander's immediate defeat has already destabilized the global market and given Vought the perfect martyr narrative. We need to dismantle the corporate structure. This is not a fistfight, Saitama. This is a siege on institutionalized evil. Saitama slumped, a deep, weary sigh escaping him. So, no fighting? Butcher fixed him with a hard look. Listen up, caped turd. We need you on a very short leash. You're the deterrent. The only reason the Seven don't fly in here and laser us is because they know you'll turn them into soup. You're not the weapon. You're the safety catch. Sit tight. When we need you to vaporize a whole building full of lawyers, we'll let you know. Saitama settled back, his boredom returning, heavy and absolute. He was a god of war dropped into a boardroom fight, his ultimate power rendered functionally useless against the soul-crushing banality of corporate corruption. The T-800, however, simply registered Saitama's continued existence as the highest priority defense perimeter. For the machine, the fight was always on. The T-800's assessment proved correct. A system, even a corrupt one, fights for self-preservation with more fervor than any individual. While Batman's algorithms meticulously dissected Vault's global finance records, the corporation launched a blindingly fast, ruthlessly efficient public relations counterstrike designed to neutralize the very concept of truth. The attack began at 4 Gyad AM Est, less than 12 hours after Homelander's humiliating public defeat. Every Vought-owned media outlet, Vought News Network, Vought Radio, and the omnipresent social media feed began an immediate, coordinated campaign of pure disinformation. The narrative was simple, emotionally manipulative, and utterly toxic. The heroes are under attack. Super-terrorist plot to destabilize America. The campaign centered entirely on the three newcomers, painting them as foreign agents, compound V failures, and most damningly, super-terrorists. Saitama's vaporization of Terror Tectonic was rebranded as a targeted, unprovoked assassination of a beloved community figure. The footage of Homelander retreating was edited to show him bravely engaging the enemies, suffering severe injuries, and retreating only to protect an implied group of civilians. The corporate machine had turned the truth inside out and served it to a public conditioned to believe the Vought brand, regardless of evidence. Ashley Barrett, despite the tremors in her hand, delivered the corporate verdict on VNN with chilling, practiced sincerity. These individuals, led by the anarchist known only as the Bat, are not heroes. They are part of a coordinated attack on the very fabric of our society, sponsored by hostile foreign actors seeking to steal the secret of Compound V. They have targeted our beloved Homelander, our protector, and destroyed public property in their wake. They are the definition of a super-terrorist. We are asking all Vought citizens to remain vigilant and report any sightings of the rogue element. Do not engage. These are dangerous, unrepresented, and illegal threats. The campaign hit the target with devastating psychological effect. Vaught's legal team filed immediate injunctions against any platform attempting to host the financial data Batman was preparing to release, citing national security and super-terrorist activity. The public, already desperate for stability in the Temp Vive era, rallied around their corporate manufactured savior. Homelander's approval rating, far from plummeting, soared to an all-time high of 98%. The narrative shifted from Homelander is weak to Homelander is a martyr. At the hideout, Huey watched the coverage, his face pale with the sickening realization that his world's corruption was too deep-seated to be solved by simple exposure. Butcher, we were going to leak the insurance fraud, the secret labs, the dead babies. How can they just call it fake? Because the public wants to believe the lie, Huey, Batman stated, his voice a low, hard rumble of disgust. His analysis of Vaught's PR model was rapid. The lie provides comfort, the truth provides fear. In a world where heroes are gods, people prefer a god who can be controlled. We are uncontrollable. They hate us for it. Butcher spat on the floor. I told you, Batman, you can't punch a PR campaign, but you can punch the people who run it, and I know where Ashley Barrett sleeps. Batman blocked the doorway. No, that is the one line we do not cross. We are not murderers, Butcher. We dismantle the system. We do not become its psychopaths. You already are, mate, Butcher retorted, his Temp V-induced aggression flaring. The machine made you a terrorist. The fight's not about morality anymore, it's about survival. They made us the villain, so we might as well do the job. The moral dilemma was lost on the T-800, who simply registered an elevated threat profile. The new data suggests Vought International has successfully deployed social engineering tactics to neutralize the information warfare advantage. Physical intervention is now optimal. Target: Vought Corporate Headquarters, 48th floor, Public Relations Division. Saitama, who had been absently tossing a cinder block and catching it one-handed, lowered the block. The TV screen was showing a tearful mother explaining how the heroes protected her children from the super-terrorist Bat. Why did they call me a terrorist? Saitama asked, his voice genuinely perplexed, his first real emotional reaction since arriving. I just told that loud guy to stop making a mess. I'm a hero for fun. They called you that because they can't control you, Huey said softly. his own moral center being scraped raw. They can't brand you, sell you, or make money off you. So they destroy you. Saitama looked down at his yellow suit. It was a cheap, simple costume. The embodiment of a simple, pure ambition. He realized his ultimate power was a useless tool against a world that preferred a comfortable lie to an inconvenient truth. The sheer scale of the systemic corruption was the only challenge he had ever faced that he could not simply punch. His boredom was suddenly replaced by a confusing, heavy sense of failure. Just then, the satellite network that Batman was using screamed an alert. The Seven, now consisting of Maeve, A-Train, and a new, desperate addition, the Deep, along with Vaught's armed tactical response units, were deploying. They weren't coming to the hideout. They were going to a Vault-owned medical facility several blocks away, a small hospital clearly marked Vought Cares, Children's Wing. They're going to create the collateral damage themselves, Batman realized, his voice metallic with disgust. They're going to use the children as leverage. They're forcing a moral choice. Butcher smiled, a predator seeing the trap closing on his enemy. There's the line, you want to save the brats and let Vought win the PR war, or let the machine win and keep your hands clean. The T-800 had already calculated the fastest route. Tactical priority, high-value human asset protection, engagement is unavoidable. Saitama looked at the screen, at the small, frightened faces of the children being rushed into lockdown by Vought security. He looked at the moral war of attrition, the legal filings, the PR spin, and the systemic corruption that made his power irrelevant. He hated it. He missed the simple purity of a challenge he could punch. I don't care about the news, Saitama said, his voice flat. But if they hurt kids, then I'll punch them, all of them, even the system. He stood up, his posture shifting, the weight of his power finally directed at a threat he understood, physical harm against the innocent. The fight was back on, but on Vaught's terms. The confrontation at the Vought-affiliated Children's Hospital was less a battle and more a moral gauntlet designed by a corporation to break a vigilante's code. Vaught's security, under the supervision of the desperate Maeve and the pathetic Deep, had quickly evacuated all non-essential personnel, leaving the hospital a sterile, silent moral kill zone with a handful of soup children and doctors acting as human shields. Batman, the T-800, and Saitama arrived simultaneously. Batman landed on the roof, deploying an advanced sonic dampener to prevent the Deep from using his limited sonic cry ability, while simultaneously uploading a counter-narrative to all local public Wi-Fi nodes, a torrent of raw, unedited footage of Vaught's crimes, hoping to overwhelm the PR spin. The T-800, equipped with Butcher's arsenal of non-Vought tech, breached the main security door, its movements a study in lethal, non-superhuman efficiency. Saitama simply vaulted the three-story building and landed silently in the main atrium. Maeve met them there, her face a mask of weary cynicism. She was drinking heavily, her movements slow, the warrior in her long since crushed by the corporate machine. She wasn't there to win, she was there to force a loss. "Stop right there, Batman," Maeve slurred, holding a Vought-issued pistol to a terrified nurse's head. "See? This is the point where the costume freaks stop being cute. You want to save the world? Vought runs the world. You're not the hero of this story, you're the complication. The moment you cross this line, the nurse dies, the kids are exposed, and Vought releases the footage showing the super-terrorist Bat murdering an innocent healthcare worker. The lie wins either way." The silence in the atrium was absolute. Batman was faced with the ultimate choice of the cynical age. Maintain integrity and let Vought win the narrative, or compromise his code and accept that his methods would be used to serve the corporate lie. The T-800, however, had no moral code. It processed Maeve as an armed hostile with a hostage. Hostage, one hostile, one optimal solution, non-lethal disarm and incapacitation. Before Batman could argue or Saitama could scratch his chin, the T-800 moved. It didn't fire its weapon. Instead, its internal chronometer calculated the exact microseconds of Maeve's muscle contraction, the rate of her alcoholic tremor, and the required velocity to achieve a non-lethal outcome. The T-800 fired a compressed air piston from its forearm, a piece of tech Frenchie had jury-rigged, sending a small, dense pellet hurtling toward Maeve's hand. The pellet struck the trigger guard of the pistol with such force and precision that it disintegrated the guard, jammed the mechanism, and shattered two of Maeve's fingers without touching the nurse. Maeve screamed, clutching her hand, dropping the useless weapon. Her superhuman durability had only ensured her bones shattered instead of the skin breaking. The T-800 ignored her, agonizing pain stepping over her and securing the nurse. Hostage secured, hostile incapacitated, lethal force avoided. But the move had bought time for the other soups. The Deep, looking desperate and smelling strongly of cheap cologne, burst through a hallway carrying two terrified children. He stood behind a reinforced glass wall separated by an emergency door. "Now what, Bat Freak? I kill these little runts and Vought blames you. You gonna punch through this Vortium glass and risk the shrapnel?" "He's right," Batman acknowledged, his mind racing. The Vortium glass was designed to withstand a tank shell. Punching it would send 1,000 razor-sharp fragments through the kids. The Deep knew his structural limits, using his low-tier powers in a strategic way. "You're pathetic," Saitama said, his voice now flat with genuine contempt, directed not at the soupy, but at the entire ugly reality of the situation. He was surrounded by 1,000 problems he was not allowed to punch. "I'm a hero," the Deep sobbed, convinced of his own victimhood. "No," Saitama corrected him. "You're a distraction." Saitama then looked up. He focused his power not on the wall, the Deep, or the children. He focused it on the ceiling directly above the Deep's location. He executed a serious clap. It was not a strike or a punch. It was a precise, controlled compression of air. He clapped his hands together, a loud, explosive sound that registered as a dull thud to human ears. The shockwave of the resulting displaced air did not travel outward, but upward, focused like a laser beam. The building's roof, 3 floors up, vaporized in a clean, circular hole. The sudden, catastrophic loss of structural support did not cause a collapse. Instead, it created an instantaneous vacuum. The Deep, standing directly underneath the vacuum's immediate effect, was violently sucked up and out of the hospital through the ceiling hole, along with the Vortium glass that imploded outward instead of inward, and the 2 children he held. Before the children could even gain enough altitude to be harmed, Batman, who had been anticipating the move's structural consequence, fired a micro-grappling hook. The highly accurate, high-tension wire snagged the children's clothes mid-air, gently lowering them back into the main atrium. They were safe. The Deep, meanwhile, was last seen spiraling through the upper atmosphere toward a distant, Vought-controlled weather balloon facility. Maeve watched the entire physics-defying sequence from the floor, holding her pulverized hand, and simply started laughing, a deep, broken sound of release. You punch a hole in the ozone layer to suck out a guy who talks to fish. What the fuck are you?" Saitama shrugged, his expression returning to profound boredom. "A hero." Butcher, listening on the comms, was ecstatic. "Bloody brilliant. Now we have the PR win. The super-terrorist saves the children. It's too good to spin!" But Vought was already spinning. The satellites Batman was trying to hijack suddenly broadcast a single, looping image on all global screens. the giant circular hole in the roof of the children's hospital, with a voiceover from Ashley Barrett. Vought International regrets to announce a catastrophic structural failure at the children's wing caused by the super-terrorist known as Saitama. Hundreds of children were threatened by the wanton, uncontrolled violence of this unrepresented threat. Vaught's own heroes contained the crisis, but this structural damage will cost millions, threatening the lives of our young patients. This is what happens when you let uncontrolled super-terrorists run rampant. The innocent pay the price. We need your donations now. Stand with Vought. The public was already responding with an overwhelming wave of donations. The physical victory was a corporate disaster. The collateral damage was not lives lost, but the truth itself. The alliance retreated, reeling not from physical damage, but from the sickening realization that Vought could monetize a catastrophe faster than they could expose a crime. The corporate machine had taken a clear-cut victory, the neutralization of 3 soups and the rescue of children, and successfully rebranded it as an act of super-terrorism against the vulnerable. Back in the hideout, Huey was staring at the news feeds, watching the ticker tape of Vought stock prices climb with every new detail about the hospital bombing. "They're making money off the hole in the roof," Huey whispered, burying his face in his hands. "They're literally using the devastation we caused to fuel their stock price. They're invincible." Batman stood over the table, his intellect confronting a problem more insidious than the Joker. "This is a war of control. They do not fight for territory. They fight for narrative dominance. My financial algorithms are ready, but a mere data dump will be legally neutralized by the terrorist injunctions. We need a physical anchor to the truth. We need to expose their core product, Compound V, in a way that the public cannot ignore or spin." Butcher, however, had the pragmatic solution to a corporate problem. He didn't care about the stock price, he cared about the people running the show. Huey tracked down the last known location of Stan Edgar. "He's the brain. You take out the brain, the body spasms. We hit the board and the cunt running the show." Inefficient, the T-800 processed, calibrating its targeting scope on a satellite photo of a Vought-owned offshore legal defense server farm. Removing Stan Edgar only results in an immediate, pre-approved succession, likely Ashley Barrett. The system persists. We must target the mechanism of control. "And what's that then, mate?" Butcher challenged, lighting a cigarette with a frustrated snap. "The ultimate deterrent," Batman interrupted, his focus hardening on a map of Vought facilities. Vought is a pharmaceutical company that manufactures gods. Their control mechanism is the Compound V research data and the anti-soup virus they are currently developing. We seize those and we hold the system hostage with the threat of eliminating all of their products, not just Homelander. Butcher considered this. Threatening to unsoup the world was the one thing that would make Vaught's executives and investors move faster than Homelander. Right. Where is this bug spray for soups kept? The T-800 presented a map projection showing a secluded facility near the Canadian border, known in Vaught's internal documents as Project Nightingale. It was a high-security research and weaponization lab, far from public view. "We need a distraction," Batman stated, "a catastrophic physical event to draw Vaught's attention and force the remaining 7 to abandon the facility. Saitama, this is your fight. You are the only one with the capacity to destroy Vaught's ultimate symbol of physical control." Saitama, still slumped on the filing cabinet, his boredom manifesting as physical lethargy, finally looked up. "A fight?" "Not a fight," Batman corrected. "A statement. We need you to destroy Vought Tower." Saitama's eyes widened slightly, the first change in expression since his arrival. "That huge building, with the big V on top?" "Yes," Butcher said with a predatory grin. "Vought Tower is their headquarters, their media center, their symbol. Homelander lives there. It's the temple of this false god. You level it, and the market crashes. You level it, and the lie has nowhere to stand. It's the only thing you can punch that will truly hurt them. Saitama stood up, stretching his arms, his yellow suit crinkling. It will be very loud, and there will be a lot of mess. That is the point, Batman said. Destroy the symbol. We will use the resulting chaos to breach Project Nightingale. Meanwhile, Stan Edgar had anticipated the need for an ultimate physical defense. He knew his investment in Homelander was a sunk cost, but he had one other weapon designed to counter threats like Saitama, Soldier Boy. In a high-security bunker deep beneath Vought Tower, Edgar stood before the cryopod of the first American soup, the walking weapon of toxic masculinity and sheer destructive power. "Soldier Boy," Edgar spoke into the comms, his voice smooth and cold. "The world requires your protection again. We have super-terrorists of immense physical capacity. Your task is to show the world that there are limits, even to gods. You are the only one who can survive the collateral damage." Soldier Boy, groggy and disoriented from his awakening, glared at Edgar through the glass. "Super-terrorists? That commie bullshit. Just point me at the problem, you pencil-pushing son of a bitch. I'll show this generation of pussies how a real hero fights." The stage was set. Saitama, the god of punch, against Soldier Boy, Vaught's original radiation-powered god of destruction. The ultimate physical distraction. Saitama, in the meantime, had begun his walk towards Vought Tower. He didn't run or fly. He simply walked, his footsteps making a sound like distant thunder. He was not looking for a challenge, he was looking for a solution to his profound philosophical problem. "If I punch the building," Saitama mused to himself, looking up at the impossible height of the skyscraper, "will I finally feel something again?" He reached the base of the Vought Tower, now completely evacuated by Vought security anticipating the attack. The gigantic, illuminated V logo on the summit seemed to mock him. He prepared to deliver the most destructive, non-serious punch of his life. Before his fist could connect, a figure in green and gold flew down to block his path. It was Starlight. She was alone, her face drawn, her eyes filled with desperation. She had abandoned the Seven for good, but she was still Annie January, the idealist who believed there was a better way than more violence. "Stop!" Starlight screamed, a flash of light emanating from her hands. "Don't do this. This is what they want. They want the chaos. They want the destruction so they can control the narrative. If you destroy this, you prove their lie. You make all the soups look bad, even the ones who are trying to help." Saitama paused, his fist inches from the steel and glass. He looked at her, then at the building, then back at the girl who was trying to stop a god with a moral plea. "So," Saitama asked, his voice low, "if I don't punch the building, the bad guy wins. And if I do punch the building, the bad guy also wins, but the lie gets bigger?" "The system wins," Starlight corrected, tears welling in her eyes. "There are no good moves left." Saitama sighed, his shoulders slumping. He had finally found his ultimate enemy. A system that rendered even his ultimate power useless. The sheer, overwhelming tragedy of the boy's universe. The moment was a philosophical crossroads. Saitama's entire existence was defined by the binary simplicity of a challenge and a punch. Starlight was offering him the agonizing complexity of the world's most efficient corporate lie. He could choose the physical, decisive action, punching the tower, and inadvertently serve Vaught's narrative, or choose inaction and allow Vaught's control to persist. He lowered his fist, the force of the delayed impact causing the air to crackle faintly. "Then where is the right fight?" he asked Starlight, his voice utterly devoid of his usual enthusiasm, tinged with a heavy, confusing disappointment. "The right fight is the quiet fight," Starlight said, seizing the opportunity. The one where you expose the truth, not create more lies. The only way to stop Vought Tower is to remove the reason for it to stand. They own the narrative because they own the fear. They own the fear because they own the cure and the weapon. They own Project Nightingale. This was enough. Saitama looked at Starlight, saw the genuine, desperate idealism in her eyes, and accepted the impossible reality. His physical power was to be a scalpel, not a hammer. "Fine," Saitama conceded, his head dipping in defeat. "No punch, but if that old man comes out of the ground, I get one shot." As if on cue, a massive explosion erupted from the ground nearby, showering the area in dirt and concrete. Soldier Boy emerged from the wreckage of the deep bunker, his face a snarl of toxic, retro-masculine rage, his shield held high. He looked like the world's worst hangover, mixed with a nuclear deterrent. "You the super-terrorist? You the one making the noise?" Soldier Boy barked, his voice distorted by years of cryo-sleep. He took one look at Saitama's simple suit and scoffed. "Looks like I stepped out of the fridge for a pajama boy. Where's your costume, freako? Where's the pride?" Saitama looked at the walking monument to Vought's original lie and felt a flicker of the challenge he had craved. Soldier Boy was a pure, physical, non-corporate threat, an old-fashioned brawl. "You look like you're going to make a huge mess," Saitama said, his only warning. Before Soldier Boy could respond, Saitama launched a serious headbutt. It was not a headbutt in the traditional sense. It was the movement of his skull at near-light speed, a controlled, highly localized physical shockwave delivered to Soldier Boy's chin. The impact was entirely silent, occurring in a vacuum of compressed air. Soldier Boy, who had survived being nuked and could withstand almost anything, did not feel pain. He felt disintegration, his power-suppressing radiation blast, which was spooling up in his chest, was violently compressed and immediately diffused. He was launched vertically through the sky, higher than even the deep, with no visible damage, but completely, irrevocably neutralized. A dizzy, power-nullified pinball currently orbiting the upper atmosphere. Saitama watched him go, then turned to Starlight. Distraction achieved, no collateral damage, not even a serious punch. Where's this Nightingale place? Meanwhile, the true threat was unfolding 300 miles north. Batman and the T-800 had used the distraction of the Soldier Boy launch to infiltrate Project Nightingale. This was Vaught's sterile, high-tech fortress of ultimate control, a lab dedicated to weaponizing Compound V research and creating an anti-soup virus that could depower any soup with a single injection. Batman, moving through the laser grids and biometric scanners, was in his element. He cracked the encryption with cold efficiency, while the T-800 neutralized the highly trained security teams with bone-breaking, non-lethal strikes. "The ethical compromise is here," Batman transmitted to the T-800. "We came to expose the truth. We have now acquired the ultimate weapon, a bioweapon that can unmake every soup in the world, including Starlight. We must make a choice, destroy the virus to prevent Vought from gaining absolute control, or keep the virus to threaten Vought into releasing the financial data." The T-800 paused, its red optical sensor fixated on the anti-soupy virus VATS. Analysis. The virus, codenamed Viper, is the ultimate power in this reality. Control of Viper grants control over Vaught's entire investment portfolio. Retention is the optimal strategy for complete systemic dismantling. "But it makes us just as monstrous as them," Batman argued, grappling with the moral decay of the world he was in. He knew if he kept the virus, he was compromising his code for the greater good. The very logic that Butcher used. Just then, the final line of physical defense arrived. A-Train, desperately running on Compound Phi boosters, his heart pounding a death rhythm in his chest, and Maeve, her hand bandaged, but her eyes hard with a desperate, self-destructive mission. "Don't move, freaks!" Maeve shouted, holding a satchel charge. "You take that virus, and Vought will turn this entire area into a wasteland. Give it up. You can't win the war, only the moral argument. And look what that got us." A-Train was moving too fast for Batman's predictive software. He was running a pattern designed to distract the T-800 and force Batman to defend himself, allowing Maeve to detonate the charge and destroy the lab and the virus. The T-800 saw the speedster's pattern and immediately calculated the only non-lethal counter. It didn't try to catch him, it didn't try to shoot him, it simply extended a single, reinforced endoskeleton foot, placing it precisely on a loose floor plate that concealed a high-voltage electrical conduit. A-Train, rounding the corner at near supersonic velocity, struck the foot. The impact was instantaneous and catastrophic. His speed was suddenly channeled directly into the heavy mechanical foot, transferring a crushing amount of kinetic energy back into his already failing legs. He flew backward, screaming, his legs broken, landing in a crumpled, sobbing heap. His heart gave out instantly. He was a corporate product who had been broken by an amoral machine's simple, structural countermeasure. Maeve, seeing her last hope crumble, dropped the satchel charge, its timer counting down. "He won," she whispered, her eyes fixed on A-Train's lifeless body. "The machine always wins." Batman moved, grabbing the virus vials and the T-800. "We have what we need. Let the lab explode. Vought will think the virus is destroyed. We need to disappear." They fled the facility as the satchel charge detonated, leveling Project Nightingale in a silent, surgical explosion. They had acquired the ultimate weapon, but Batman's moral compass was spinning wildly. He was now a terrorist holding a bioweapon, the very thing he swore to fight. The acquisition of the Viper virus fundamentally altered the power dynamic. Vought believed the anti-Sup bioweapon was destroyed, giving Batman and his allies, now including Starlight and a profoundly disheartened Saitama, the ultimate, terrifying leverage. They had the power to unmake every Sup in the world, an asset far more valuable than a defeated Homelander or a decimated Vought Tower. Butcher, ecstatic and vindicated by the ruthlessness of the T-800, was already planning the next step in their siege on Vought Tower. "We send a simple message, Batman. You release the full financial data, or we release the anti-V virus. They'll drop their contracts, they'll burn their shell corporations, and they'll depower their own bloody children to stop us. We won, mate. It's over." Batman, however, was grappling with the moral and legal consequences of holding a global bioweapon. He had crossed his Rubicon, and the sight of the Viper vials, each one capable of ending a life or simply ending a power, was a constant, corrosive weight on his soul. "We have not won," Batman argued, his voice cold and strained. "We have merely acquired a bigger gun. The core issue remains accountability. If we merely blackmail Vought into compliance, they will survive and retaliate. We must bring the truth to a platform that cannot be corrupted. We must go to the government, but with a guarantee." "The government is Victoria Newman," Huey reminded them, pointing to the VNN feed where Newman, the secret Sup and VP candidate, was tearfully condemning the terrorist attack on Project Nightingale. "She's a Vought plant, Butcher. She pops heads." "Exactly," Butcher grinned, the temp phi in his system pushing his cynicism to new heights. "She's a Vought plant with a secret. The secret that she's a Sup. She's the ultimate hypocrite, and we've got the one thing that can stop her popping anyone's head, the Viper virus." The plan was a deadly, three-part chess move designed by Batman. The bait, Starlight, the public face of the Resistance, and the only current Vought asset with a moral center, would contact Victoria Newman and propose a secret, high-stakes meeting. The lure: exclusive access to the full, authenticated Compound V financial data for Newman to use in her political campaign, thus exposing Vought in a public forum. The trap. The meeting would take place in a secure, non-Vought-owned space. The T-800 would secure the perimeter, and Batman would have a specialized, remote-operated injector containing the Viper virus. The statement, Newman would be given the data. If she betrayed them, the T-800 would secure her for an immediate, public injection of Viper, thus eliminating Vought's political asset and forcing the exposure of the anti-super weapon. The statement would be clear. No super is safe, and we have the power to enforce justice. Saitama, relegated to the role of ultimate defense, was stationed on the highest spire of a neighboring building. His gaze fixated on the city, his boredom the true measure of his unchallengeable power. The meeting took place in the basement of a defunct bank, surrounded by cold, empty vault, a fitting location for the exchange of power and secrets. Starlight, dressed in plain clothes, met with Victoria Newman, who arrived alone, radiating political calm and thinly veiled ambition. "I have the full data, Victoria," Starlight said, sliding a heavily encrypted drive across the table. "Everything. The super-terrorist funding, the Sage Grove experiments, the Compound V trials on children. You use this, and Vought is finished. You become the hero who saved democracy." Newman smiled, a practiced, confident political expression. "And what do you want, Annie? A pardon? A nice retirement package?" "Accountability," Starlight stated. "We want Vought's power destroyed, not just rebranded. We want the truth to matter for once." Newman picked up the drive, her fingers lightly tapping the smooth plastic, but her eyes were already betraying her. She was a plant, a survivor, and ultimately a self-serving soup. She knew that Vought controlled the money, and with Homelander defeated, she was their highest value asset. She didn't need Starlight's messy, moral truth. "I appreciate the offer, Annie," Newman said softly, her smile widening into a politician's grimace. "But I think Vaught's narrative is stronger than yours. And I already know the truth. I don't need the messy evidence." As she spoke, she raised her hand slightly, the tell for her devastating, head-popping power. She was going to eliminate Starlight, secure the data drive, and then leak a heavily edited version to cement her political power while pinning the terrorism on the resistance. Before her power could fully manifest, a loud, metallic click echoed from the shadows. The T-800 stepped forward, its targeting sensor locked on Newman's temple. "Analysis. Political betrayal confirmed," the T-800 stated, its voice flat. "Target. Incarceration or termination." Newman's eyes flashed with pure, primal fear. She had encountered soups before, but never a machine that radiated such cold, absolute purpose. She raised her power again, this time focused entirely on the machine. But the T-800 was not a soup. Her power, the localized compression of blood and brain matter, was useless against its chrome endoskeleton and synthetic brain. The machine was a blank slate to her organic, V-based power set. "Physical power neutralized," the T-800 stated. It raised its specialized injection device, the Viper injector. "Compliance required." Newman shrieked, a sound of pure terror, and launched her power at the only organic target she could see, Starlight. A flash of light, and Starlight's head was suddenly protected by a thin, glowing sphere of pure photons, her own power, instantly deployed by the sheer panic of her situation. Newman's power hit the sphere and dissipated, a wave of lethal energy neutralized by desperate, defensive energy. Saitama, watching from the rooftop, registered the fight. He saw the black car pull up and the familiar figures emerging. Homelander, now wearing a simple grey tactical uniform, accompanied by the new, terrifyingly smart Soup, Sister Sage. Vought had realized the fight was strategic, and had brought in their intellectual countermeasure. "You can't win, Batman," Sister Sage's voice crackled through the comms, instantly overriding the secure line. "You have the virus, but we have the political control. We know you are holding an anti-soup bioweapon. We are filing an immediate motion with the UN Security Council for chemical weapons violations. You win the physical fight, but we win the legal one. Now surrender, or the entire world will hunt you." Batman, watching the internal conflict between Starlight and Newman and listening to the cold, undeniable logic of Sister Sage, realized the agonizing truth. Vought had perfected a system that used the law and international politics as a weapon against justice. They were trapped in a moral and legal cage. The confrontation with Victoria Newman was the final devastating proof. In this universe, the system's resilience outweighed even the power of a god. Batman and his allies had acquired the ultimate physical deterrent, Saitama, and the ultimate bioweapon, Viper. Yet Vought, advised by the terrifying intelligence of Sister Sage, countered with the ultimate weapon of the modern world, international law and public narrative. As Newman shrieked at the unmoving T-800 and Starlight held her desperate, luminous shield, Sister Sage's voice, smooth, analytical, and utterly dispassionate, echoed in the secure basement. "You have committed an act of transnational terrorism, Batman," Sage analyzed. "Holding a bioweapon, even a theoretical one, is a violation of every international treaty. Your moral argument is irrelevant. We have filed the preliminary injunction. You are now designated a global threat. Homelander and his team are now legally authorized to use any necessary force to contain you. The entire world just gave Vought a blank check for your termination." Homelander, descending slowly outside the bank, smiled, the kind of cold, triumphant smile that only came from the realization that even in defeat, the system had delivered him victory. He didn't need to be stronger than Saitama, he just needed to be legal. "Your move, Bat," Homelander's voice boomed. "You can kill the politician, but you lose the world. You surrender the virus, and you save your reputation. You lose. It's the only option." Batman's mind was in absolute turmoil. His code dictated that he could not use a bioweapon, yet destroying it meant losing the only leverage against the most powerful, evil corporation in the world. He was a moral crusader trapped in a system that had outlawed morality. "Starlight, release the data now," Batman commanded, his voice tight. "Upload it to every secure leak site. Make the corruption public. We will take the political fight, not the chemical one." Starlight, seeing the impossible choice, did as she was told, hitting the master upload key. The drive instantly began broadcasting a torrent of authenticated Vought crimes to the global dark web. As the data left the building, Homelander acted. He didn't attack. He simply smiled and looked up. "Firecracker," he stated, referring to Vought's new alt-right soup asset. "Let's give them a nice welcome." A massive, brilliant flash of fire and light erupted from the roof of the bank, Firecracker's power designed for maximum spectacle and collateral damage. The blast was not aimed at the heroes, but at the surrounding buildings, ensuring that the rescue team and the inevitable media frenzy would arrive to a scene of maximum devastation. The fight was now on two fronts: the internal, deadly confrontation in the bank, and the external, political and physical siege. Victoria Newman, seeing the external chaos and realizing her opportunity, made her move. She focused her head-popping power on Starlight again, only this time she launched herself at the T-800, hoping to seize the Viper injector. "Termination sequence initiated," the T-800 stated, unmoving. It had been programmed for this eventuality. It held the Viper injector and simply waited. Before Neumann could reach the T-800, a shadow fell over the bank. Saitama had descended, and he was no longer bored. He was furious at the sheer, overwhelming unfairness of the situation, the spectacle, the lies, the political theater that threatened to render his existence pointless. Saitama wasn't interested in the law or the politics. He was interested in stopping the chaos. He didn't look at Newman, he didn't look at Homelander. He looked at the source of the chaos, the vault tower, which was still standing, still serving as the symbol. No more lies, Saitama declared. He launched himself into the air, a movement that cracked the basement floor with the pressure of his launch. He was aimed not at the symbol, but at the architect of the chaos, Sister Sage. She was the only one who truly understood how to beat him, the one who had used his own power against him by creating a legal trap. Homelander, seeing the god in the yellow suit abandoning the ground target for the mid-air one, knew exactly what was about to happen. Saitama would bypass Homelander to take out the strategist. Homelander intercepted, flying at full speed, a final, desperate attempt to protect the only person who could save his career. Saitama, mid-flight, met Homelander's charge with a serious punch. It was the true, ultimate expression of his power. Not the flick that vaporized Terra Tectonic, nor the headbutt that neutralized Soldier Boy, but a full-spectrum controlled release of overwhelming force. The punch did not hit Homelander, it hit the air directly in front of him. The resulting shockwave was not sound, it was a physical wall of compressed atmosphere. Homelander, who was used to shrugging off missiles, hit the shockwave and was instantly, utterly flattened into a perfectly two-dimensional pancake. He didn't bleed, he didn't scream. He was simply compressed into a star-spangled stain, a symbol of absolute power crushed into a logo. The ultimate lie was erased, not just physically, but mathematically. Saitama then corrected his flight path and continued toward Sister Sage, who was watching the annihilation of Homelander with utter, analytical calm. "Your power is fascinating," Sage said, not flinching as Saitama approached. "But the system is already compromised. I've uploaded a full 100-page dossier on your bioweapon violation to The Hague. You have won the physical fight, but the law ensures you are the ultimate loser. We win. Now, you must choose, punch me and become the terrorist, or capture me and lose the narrative." Saitama stopped, hovering in the air. He looked at the calm, terrifyingly intelligent woman, the ultimate corporate architect. He realized she was right. He could punch her, but the paperwork was already filed. Saitama chose the only third option. He didn't punch her. He simply grabbed her and flew her back to the bank vault. In the bank, Newman, seeing the flat, compressed remains of Homelander on the street and realizing the extent of Saitama's power, gave up. She dropped her defensive stance and put her hands up. "It's over," Newman whispered, her voice broken. "The system is dead. We surrender." Batman, the T-800, Starlight, and Saitama stood over the captured politician and the paralyzed corporate strategist, surrounded by the physical wreckage of Vault's final stand. They had won the battle. Homelander was dead, the anti-soup virus was secured, and the financial data was released. But in Vault Tower, Ashley Barrett was already running the next PR campaign, sobbing hysterically as she typed the headline. "Global terrorists execute Homelander. Political asset Victoria Newman held hostage. UN condemns attack on Vault." The immediate aftermath was one of dizzying, contradictory chaos. Homelander, Vault's ultimate product, was a compressed, two-dimensional stain on the street, his perfect, smiling face a crushed piece of propaganda. Victoria Newman and Sister Sage were secured in the defunct bank vault, two vital assets of the corporate structure held hostage by the resistance. Project Nightingale was rubble, and the financial data on Vault's crimes was flooding the dark web. The physical power of the corporation was decimated, yet Vault International, the Hydra, refused to die. Ashley Barrett, now the trembling, hair-pulling chief executive officer by a desperate, instantaneous board vote, leveraged the chaos perfectly. She appeared on every news channel, weeping openly, condemning the execution of Homelander and the kidnapping of their political leader, Victoria Newman. The narrative was brutal and effective. The world's most beloved hero was murdered by lawless super-terrorists, proving that all uncontrolled power was dangerous. The United Nations, facing global market collapse and the undeniable truth of the chemical weapon violation, issued a formal, unanimous resolution condemning the Saitama Terminator axis of super-terrorism. The entire world, conditioned by Vaught's relentless propaganda, now viewed the trio not as saviors, but as the final, desperate threat to global order. In the bank vault, the cynical alliance had achieved its goal. The physical and financial structure of Vought was shattered. "We did it, Batman," Huey whispered, watching the global news feed paint them as monsters. "They're finished. The company's stock is worthless. The military contracts are frozen. They have no heroes." "They have the system," Batman corrected, his face grim. He stood over the Viper virus injector, the weight of the moral compromise heavy on him. He had exposed the truth, but the truth had merely become a new tool for the lie. He was a wanted man, holding a bioweapon, and his greatest achievement was turning the world against him. Saitama, looking entirely defeated, was staring at the floor. "I punched the biggest threat. Why am I still bored? Why does the bad guy still win?" "Because the bad guy isn't a person," Starlight explained, sitting with the captured Sister Sage. "It's the idea. It's the public's need to believe in a lie, a comfortable one, rather than face a messy, violent, complicated truth. You can't punch a collective delusion." Sister Sage, calm and analytical, offered the final, devastating corporate truth. "Vought is not a company, Saitama. Vought is a philosophy. We proved that true power is not physical strength, but the control of information and the manipulation of legal structures. You killed Homelander, but you created an international incident that allows Vought to claim billions in insurance and gain massive political sympathy. We have won the long game." Butcher, however, had one final brutal card to play. He knew how the public loved a spectacle. He dragged Victoria Newman and Sister Sage out of the vault and to the nearest live news camera, forcing Starlight to stand with them. "Listen up, you stupid cunts!" Butcher snarled into the camera, his voice dripping with rage and the desperation of a dying man. "You want accountability? I'll give you accountability. This is the ultimate soup, the politician who pops your heads, the brain who writes your lies." He grabbed the Viper injector from the T-800, his hands trembling. He had crossed every line. He was dying from Temple V, and his final move would be to prove that no soup could survive his war. He aimed the injector at Victoria Newman's neck. "If you want the truth to matter," Butcher declared, "then you have to kill the lies, and these two cunts are the biggest bloody lies of all." Butcher fired the injector. The Viper virus shot into Victoria Newman's neck. But instead of depowering her, something unexpected happened. Newman, a natural soup whose power manifested in a unique way, fought the virus. She shrieked, her veins bulging, and her internal power pushed back against the chemical agent. The virus didn't depower her, it overloaded her. In a final catastrophic burst of internalized power, Victoria Newman's head did not pop. Her entire body exploded in a fine, localized red mist, a massive surge of blood and V-enhanced cells erupting outward, instantly killing the news crew and showering Butcher and the T-800 in her remains. The event was captured live on 1,000 phones and news cameras. Sister Sage, covered in the mist of her colleagues' remains, did not flinch. "Unanticipated variable," she stated, her analysis cold and immediate. "Viper is unstable on natural-born soups, a political assassination that will now be blamed entirely on the vigilante Butcher. Butcher stood there, covered in gore, his final act of desperate justice twisted into an act of unhinged terrorism. He had murdered a politician live on air, and all he had accomplished was the confirmation of Vaught's new, horrific narrative. Batman, seeing the final corruption, knew what he had to do. He couldn't keep the virus, he couldn't trust the law, he had to erase the problem itself. He snatched the remaining vials and crushed them under his armored boot, destroying the only thing that gave them leverage. "The system wins," Batman announced, his voice devoid of emotion. "The physical fight is meaningless. We have destroyed Vaught's assets, but the world now hunts us, and we are no better than the monsters we fought. The T-800 secure Sister Sage. Saitama, we move." They had won the war only to find the new, horrible truth. In the boys' universe, victory doesn't lead to peace. It leads to a new, more desperate war for survival. The system adapted, and the heroes were now the designated villains of the globe. The immediate, devastating result of the Homelander's death and Newman's explosive end was the global, unified designation of Saitama, Batman, and the T-800 as global super-terrorists. They had achieved the impossible, the physical dismantling of Vaught's core assets, the death of its most powerful super, and the exposure of its financial crimes. But the system had adapted in real time. Homelander was now a martyr, his murder justifying the entire Vought philosophy of uncontrolled soups are dangerous. The released data, though real, was dismissed as a final, desperate fabrication by the lawless terrorists. Saitama, the god who could end any physical threat, was left profoundly defeated not by a punch, but by an existential crisis. His power was useless against the crushing weight of public delusion and corporate law. His ultimate enemy was boredom and the complexity of evil he could not simply punch. Batman, compromised by his decision to wield the Viper bioweapon, had saved his soul by destroying the virus, but now held the legal status of a global chemical terrorist. He had dismantled the corporate front, but was now forced into a shadow war against the entire world's governmental structure, all manipulated by Vaught's terrifyingly smart new CEO, Sister Sage, secured but not defeated. The T-800, the immoral enforcer, had achieved its objective of system dismantling and now served as the ultimate weapon for a new, deeply cynical vigilante war. Butcher, covered in Newman's remains, realized his last desperate moral stand had been twisted into the ultimate act of self-destruction. The price of fighting monsters was the corruption of his last few remaining days. He would now face the world, hunted, having successfully proven Vaught's core lie correct. You cannot fight a monster without becoming one. The takeover was complete, not a takeover of power, but a takeover of accountability. They had forced the world to finally face the corruption, but in doing so, they had become the final, most terrifying scapegoat. The world was now forced to choose between the comfortable, dead lie of Homelander or the violent, terrifying truth of the heroes who killed him. The system persisted, adapting to the ultimate physical power by weaponizing law, PR, and public fear. Some things can't be fixed. More stories awaits.